Got it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our self-care webinar. Just a reminder that if you are watching the recording, that you can answer the questions and email them in, and you can get your professional development certificate. Now, that might be somebody who is a counsellor or a therapist or a teacher who would like that for their PD points, or you just might be a parent, you might be a parent who would like to be able to just have it in your portfolio. Often as parents, we end up getting part-time jobs, and these certificates can be actually really helpful, or we decide we want to go back and do some study. These certificates can be really helpful. So you can retrospectively, if you've been to the webinars, go back and you potentially can accumulate about 14 certificates if you go back and watch them all and answer the questions. All right, let's get on and get straight into this. There are a pile of myths about self-care. You have to do self-care. It's a thing. If your self-care doesn't look like my self-care, it isn't self-care. So what's self-care for one person is actually really different for another. The same thing works all of the time. So if sitting down with a beautiful cup and having a cup of tea in a really pretty space works as self-care one time, it might not work as self-care the next time. The same thing does not work all of the time. Set and forget, just not true. Because self-care is about actually thinking about what you're doing and being intentional about it. Self-care is selfish and self-centered. That is just a myth. The effects of self-care are temporary. That is not actually true. We're going to talk about the long-term effects of not doing self-care well. And self-care actually has a long-term positive effect for us. Self-care is just something women need to do, not a true story at all. Self-care takes too much time. And I think goes with that. I can't do self-care unless I've got everything done. And once I've got everything done, then I can do self-care. Yeah, nah. Self-care is doing anything that soothes you. Well, that's not actually true. Drinking a glass of wine every night, that might soothe you, but it's not actually good self-care. Having an occasional glass of wine, but if you're actually having a glass of wine and drinking every day, that is not good self-care. Eating chocolate might be occasional self-care, but it is not self-care for all of the time. Having a few cones might be something that soothes you and calms your anxiety down, but it's actually not self-care. And I can't afford self-care. That's not a true story either, because self-care isn't always about having your nails done, having a massage, going away for a weekend. Those things, whilst they're nice, aren't the things that really fill your cup in a sustainable manner. Helpful sometimes, but not always. So the risks of neglecting self-care are really far-reaching. Depression and anxiety, weight gain or loss. Often when we feel out of control, our eating is one thing we can control. So for some people, that is restricting their eating and having lots of rules about their eating. And for other people, it's that emotional eating or compulsive eating that happens, and they're equally as unhelpful as each other. A lack of mental clarity, feeling overwhelmed and foggy. Difficulty in relationships. I know when I'm not looking after myself well, I start to get nitpicky and I fall back into some old habits. And one of my old habits that I do when I'm not doing good self-care is a thing called the trailing barb. And I used to be the queen of the trailing barb. So a trailing barb is where you give a compliment or you say thank you for something, and then there's just this really nasty little hook at the end. It's almost like using a but. I'm sorry, but. It's almost like saying thank you, but you didn't quite get it right. So I would say things like, oh, sweetheart, thank you so much for taking us out for dinner. We had a lovely evening. It was just a pity that the tables weren't really set properly. Or it's a pity that that waiter was rude. Or I'm a bit sad that the mousse wasn't quite right. It actually negates everything that you said before. Or, oh, you did a great job on cleaning up the house. I can see you didn't get to the playroom. Or, oh, really good job that you got 95% on that assignment, but what was the go with the other 5%? That's trailing barbs, and they're called a barb because they kind of dig in and they stick. And I find that when I'm not doing my self-care, that's kind of my indicator. The other thing that's an indicator for me of not doing self-care properly is I start getting really frustrated with the checkout chicks and how slow they go. I'm just like, would you just hurry up? Like, no, I don't want to chat about my day. No, I don't want to know about your week or your day. I just want you to get the groceries through. And we all have our tells that let us know that, you know, we're not doing so well. We have difficulty trusting others and ourselves, addiction or addictive kind of behaviors, a tendency to value instant gratification. So that's like computer games, Facebook, chocolate, a glass of wine, too many coffees in a day, those kinds of things. Fatigue-related insomnia. So when we're so tired and we just want to sleep, and then when we finally get into bed, bing, and it starts that really dreadful cycle. Poor hygiene and low self-esteem are all things that are an unintended consequence of us neglecting our self-care. Karen, have you got any thoughts?
I was just thinking, I'm a high achiever. I can tick all of those. Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Not alone there, Karen. I think for me, because I've had a sick child for 8 weeks off school, so I'm pretty much got the weight gain. My brain isn't working. I've gained, you know, like it's just, you just can tick all of them.
Yes.
And you're right, like even like what you talked about in the beginning where, you know, people think it's doing something nice for yourself, but sometimes it's, if like say you haven't done your tax return and it's weighing on you, self-care might actually be doing something horrible like your taxes.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's taken that weight off you or the thoughts of all that. I actually haven't done my taxes. So I've got
okay. How long have you got? Until
mid-May.
Yeah. All right. There's still time.
There's plenty of time.
Yeah, there is. And we'll talk about what self-care is. But it's just really important to think about it because there's all, as I said before, there's all these myths about that it's selfish to do self-care. But it can actually be the most loving thing that you do for your family is prioritizing your wellness, says she who doesn't always do that very well. So I wanted to talk about our interoceptive awareness in relationship to our own self-care. So when we're talking about interoceptive awareness, we're talking about the 8th sense. So we've got our 5 senses that we're all familiar with: our sight, our smell, our taste, our hearing, and touch. Then we have our vestibular sense, which is our balance. Our proprioceptive sense is where we are in space and time. And then we have our interoceptive sense, or our interoceptive awareness, which is our understanding of the messages we're getting from our body. And when we are really busy, really tired, really overwhelmed, we suppress our own needs and we actually suppress our interoceptive awareness. So we don't notice that we're hungry. We don't notice that we're thirsty. We don't go to the loo enough times during the day. We don't notice that our body is saying you actually need to sit down and rest. We don't notice what that feeling in our stomach is telling us, or that feeling in our shoulders. We just keep pushing through, and we actually suppress our interoceptive awareness. And we actually then model not being interoceptively aware to our kids as well. And if we have delayed, impaired, or impacted interoceptive awareness, we actually don't have the precursor skills to actually use any emotional regulation tools at all. And we see this in our kids, you know, like we know zones of regulation are amazing. And I am evangelically proud of my champion of the zones of regulation. But we also know that that tool, or the alert program, or the 5-point scale, or a traffic light system, those systems are great, but they're not available to kids or to us if we have impaired interoceptive awareness. So an example of that, and many of you will have heard me say this before, like zones of regulation. What zone are you in? Oh, I'm in the blue zone. So are you sad, sick, tired, or bored? No, I'm sad, sick, tired, bored. No. Are you sad? Are you sick? Are you tired? Or are you bored? And our kids who have really impaired interoceptive awareness can rote learn the patterns, but if they can't identify whether they are sad, sick, tired, or bored, they might be able to tell you that if I'm tired, I need to go for a walk, I need to have a drink of water, and I need to have something to eat. That's what I have to do if I'm tired. So they can even tell you what all the strategies are to address those things, but they can't actually tell whether they are sad, sick, tired, or bored. And we become the same when we neglect our self-care. Because sometimes I will say to parents, so are you sad, sick, tired, or bored? And they just go, oh, I don't know, I'm just overwhelmed. So if you're just overwhelmed and your interoceptive awareness is turned off, you can't tell whether you need to have a sleep or a rest, or go for a walk, or have a drink of water, or go to the toilet, or whether you need to eat a piece of fruit because your fiber's down and your whole insides are gunked up because you've been eating too much chocolate and toast because it's quick and easy. So us being really attuned to what's happening in our bodies is a real key to us accessing self-care. Karen, did you want to say anything more about that? Because you're totally across interoception as well.
Yeah, look, I had not thought of it as lack of self-care as affecting interoception awareness. But as soon as you're saying it, of course it does. Yep, you just get so overwhelmed. You don't even know what to do with yourself. Yeah, it's so true. I hadn't even made that connection.
Oh, okay.
Yep, really good.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. So if we can't do it ourselves, how can we teach our kids to do it? And that's why I was so excited to be talking about self-care tonight. And I didn't want it to just be like the normal, oh, well, go for a walk. That's correct. Go for a walk. But you've actually got to be convinced about why going for a walk is a good idea. And if you're not convinced of that, you're not going to be able to do it and sustain it. So I did want to change up a little bit how we do and talk about self-care. All right. So there's actually 6 areas of self-care. Now, remember, you're going to get the slides, so don't panic about writing notes. There's physical, psychological and emotional, social, spiritual, professional, and online. I added the online. Nobody else is mentioning that, but I've added that because I think it's really important. So when we're thinking about physical, we're talking about the food that we eat, taking care of personal hygiene, getting the right amount of exercise, wearing clothes that help me feel good about myself, eating regularly. Anyway, moving on from that one, participate in fun activities, get enough sleep, go to preventative medical appointments. I haven't been to my rheumatologist for several years now. And I was just saying to Karen at the start of the meeting, I went down and saw her today. And there's actually been some advances in medications that I wasn't aware of. And I can potentially change up my medications. It's going to be a bit of a process, but that's self-care. I have been terrible at going to the dentist. You know, that's been a real area that I've really lacked in with my self-care. And in a few weeks, I'm going to go and have some dental surgery. And I'm really, you know, changing up my self-care in that, because I feel like I'm disingenuous if I'm saying to you, you need to look after yourself, and I'm not actually modeling that myself. Rest when you're sick. Anyway, I feel like I go through phases where I do self-care really, really well. And then I just totally fall off the wagon and it just goes down the gurgler really quickly. And what generally happens is I do self-care well, and I get to a point where I'm doing okay. And so I kind of let the self-care lapse. And I kind of, if everything's going well, I kind of feel like I don't need to do those things. And then the impact of doing them well, which got me to being okay, I kind of like then slowly go on a decline and realize after 6 months, I haven't been doing my self-care well again. And I kind of go through this cycle, and I'm wanting to really change that up. Kez, you got any comments?
I was just going to say, rest when sick. I think prior to COVID, I think it was a bit of a badge of honour to keep working when you're unwell.
Yeah, have a codral. Codral soldier on, spread the germs to everyone.
So true. So true. It was a real, yeah, I'm unwell, but I'm here, and yep, I'll get it done.
And I've taken 5 Codral and a Lemsip, and I'm, you know, I'm flying high, but I'm here.
Yeah.
And my poor body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definite badge of honour, really. And among the hardworking, it was kind of like, yep, I just keep going.
Grind. Yeah. All right. The next one is psychological and emotional. So taking time off from work, school, and other obligations. And some of those other obligations might be doing the canteen at the soccer or the footy, or, you know, running the cake stall for the dance club, or the school fete, or the coffee at church, or, you know, the reading group, or Foodies Free Laneway, or the soup bus, or whatever it happens to be. It's actually really important to take time off from those things. Participate in hobbies, learn new things that are unrelated to work or school. Like I've got on my bucket list, I want to actually learn how to do LED lighting. And I keep thinking I'll do that when I retire. And I actually maybe need to think about doing it sooner rather than later, because I actually think I'd really like it. Express my feelings in a healthy way, recognize my own strengths and achievements. Do go on vacations and day trips. They're really important. Do something that you do find comforting, but it doesn't have to be eating or drinking wine. Like there's lots of other things that we can do. Find reasons to laugh. I think being grateful and having an attitude of gratefulness for the good things that we've got, and, you know, that 3 things that we're grateful for the day, I think is a great practice. And even sharing at dinner time 1 thing we're grateful for the day. We go really well at doing that for ages, and then something happens, and, you know, I might have a webinar and another night meeting, and we just then get out of the habit of it, and talk about my problems. I think that's really, really important. As therapists, we have to have clinical supervisors who supervise our work, and then we're really encouraged to have somebody else that we talk to as well. as part of our self-care. So there's our professional care and then our self-care as well. Social. So spending time with people who we like. Sometimes we have people who we have to spend time with, like family, who we don't necessarily always like. We actually, it's okay, we love them, but we don't necessarily like them or enjoy being with them all the time. So that's really important. Having stimulating conversations. So actually having conversations that we can really get into discussions about. Meeting new people, spending time alone with a romantic partner if you have one, asking for help when you need it, doing enjoyable activities with other people. You know, for some people that might be watching the V8s or watching the footy or going op shopping or going down to Gordon to the hat shop. There's all different things that are meaningful. Keeping in touch with old friends, you know, a phone call or an email. Spiritual. This is a really important component of us. And I would say that we're a triune being, like we're made up of 3 parts. And it's like, oh, Bobbi's going to go all hoodoo guru on us, but hear me out. So we're a body. So we have our shell and we have our soul, which is who we are. That's like our thoughts and our opinions and our feelings. And then we have this thing that is called all different things. So it might be called our spirit or our observing self. So when we look at acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT as it's called, we talk about observing self. And that is that we can actually watch ourselves doing things or be aware of ourselves doing things. So sometimes I can be losing the plot and kind of be having a bit of a meltdown. And I could actually be in my head going, Bobbi, you know, this really isn't very helpful to be behaving in this way. And so that actually says to me, there's another part of me yet. So I can be authentically having those emotions, but there's another part of me that can be observing that. So that tells me there's 3 parts. There's the body, there's the thoughts and feelings, and then there's another bit. And so we actually need to spend time on that other bit as well. And just be acknowledging that there is that other bit. And connecting with that other bit is really important. And listening to what that other bit has to say about us, because our mind produces thoughts 24/7, unbidden. That's just what minds do. And so there's this ongoing dialogue all the time. And we often believe that dialogue as if it's 100% true, but we can actually go, oh, that's interesting. That's that story again about I'm not good enough. Or that's interesting. That's that story again about I need to work hard all of the time to be successful. Or, oh, that's interesting. There's that I'm not pretty enough dialogue again. So we can kind of be having this dialogue in our head, but we can notice it. So that kind of indicates to us we are not that dialogue, and then that dialogue, we can actually judge it and see whether it's true or not. Kez, did you have anything to say?
Sorry, my puppy is just doing naughty things.
Oh, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I left my puppies at home because they would be doing naughty things too. Mm-hmm. Puppies are a bit like little kids when you're on the phone and when you're engaged in something else. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's wearing my shoes like a hat. Yeah. So.
Okay. You might need to take a photo of that, Karen, so that you can show me tomorrow. Recognize the things that give meaning to my life. So, you know, if I think about, say, Aisha, some of the things that I know give meaning to her life are being creative and innovative and beautiful things, and art and creativity, nature, helping other people, being kind, being an amazing parent. They're all the things that I have observed give meaning to Aisha's life. And the things that fill Aisha's cup are when she acts in accordance with those values.
That's really true, Bobbi. You know me well.
Yeah, and so it's recognizing those things that give meaning and really valuing them, and participating in things that are really important. And those things can change over time. And like, we're called for a reason, a season, or a lifetime in relationships, in causes, in work that we're called to do. There's different things that we're called to do in different seasons. And it may be political, it may be social, it might be the SES, it might be the Royal Children's Hospital, it might be a church group, it might be the Autism Network, it might be the ADHD, ADSD support page. There's all different causes that we can participate in that can be really meaningful and important to us. And that is actually acknowledging that other part of ourselves and keeping that alive. And yeah.
And I know for me, Bobbi, like, you know, I'm so tired right now that I'm just getting through the day, and I'm sure some of you can relate to that.
Yeah.
And this sort of thing, it's like I have to get my foundations right, because I don't have the capacity, even though they fill my cup, like, or meditation I could probably do, but I'd probably fall asleep with any luck. But it's like, if you don't have the food and the sleep, especially the sleep right, all these other things just sort of cascade out of control.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah, and I need resources to be in that spiritual cup filling, I guess.
Yeah. But it's an important part of our self-care.
Oh, it's crucial.
Yeah.
Because as parents, and, you know, if we've got professionals as well on the call, you need those things that light you up and take you, that are separate from being a mother or a father or a teacher or a worker, that, you know, really make your heart sing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And that's why I wanted to talk about all the different areas of self-care, because if we put, like, we could do a few different activities about, you know, here's all the different, you know, areas of self-care, and put a point, like draw a dot, how close you are to being successful or how far away you are. And we'd end up with this little spiky thing, because in some areas we'd be, you know, we'd be kicking goals and we'd be, you know, 100% on that area of self-care. But then we'd look at another area of self-care and go, oh yeah, no, I'm not hitting the mark on that one at all.
Like you were saying before, Bobbi, it changes. Like, I was really good at self-care in February, and now I've just gone to crap, really. So, you know, it's good to notice it as a pattern or a changing thing. And we're riding that wave of whatever's happening in our kids' lives and in our own lives.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, like, I have been planning that I would have a month with no clinical load so that I could actually fit in some appointments for myself, like going to see the rheumatologist this week, going to the dentist next week, getting everything done ready for dental surgery, you know, at the end of May. I've had to be strategic, and I've had to plan for this time this year. But it's been hard.
Yes, everyone wants you. That's for sure.
But if I don't do my self-care, I'm not any good to anyone. And if I need to have a couple of months off clinical load, well, then that's actually what I'm going to do, to actually make sure my cup is really full, and to reset those boundaries and just get things sorted out a bit.
And I think what I'm seeing too is that after the last 2 years, we're sort of in the COVID hangover and transition there. So we're not really recovered from having kids at home. And I've noticed, like, this is the first term the kids have been at school sort of for a whole 2 years, right?
2 years, yeah.
So, like, the principal at my son's school is like, they've actually done really well to not be falling over, I think. So, and we're the same, right?
Absolutely. And for me personally, I actually find COVID harder now than I did during the lockdowns. I actually find it more stressful now than during the lockdowns, because during lockdowns, we could keep all of our appointments. We just flipped them all onto Zoom. We could support families really, really well. Families weren't sick, so they weren't missing appointments. So our cash flow was okay, just being really blunt. But now, if people are cancelling their appointments, they're cancelling them because they're sick. And all of our families are sick all of the time. My staff are sick all of the time. And I've had 2 years where I haven't had sick staff and I haven't had sick families. And now it just seems like everybody's sick. And it's just exhausting for everyone, because everybody's like, oh, I need to get back to work, but we're not resting long enough. And yep, sorry, I'm having a whinge. But that's just the reality of it. We kind of, on one hand, think COVID's over, but I disagree. It's actually harder than it was before, but there's not the media rhetoric around it being hard. And so there's not that support. And I've actually seen a significant decline in mental health this term, more so than during the lockdowns. So that's been really huge. Much more school refusal. Ugh. We'll do a webinar on school refusal. All right, professional. Okay, so professional self-care, looking after ourselves, saying no to excessive new responsibilities, just taking breaks during work, getting the balance right, working out what the balance is, I think is really, really difficult. Making sure you're having correct supervision, making sure you're doing the job you want to be doing. Our relationships changed over Zoom with our colleagues. We might talk to them on Zoom every day, but we weren't having those photocopier chats and we weren't having those at the kettle chats. So our relationships are different and we need to rebuild them in a different way. For a lot of people who've been working remotely for 2 years, they're now coming back into the office. And that's a very different space. So our stamina for being in the office all day, every day, just isn't there. It's really, really, really different for everyone. So just really be thinking about your professional self-care. We have got a lot of carers who are full-time at-home carers at the moment. And they've have shared that their experience is that they actually don't have a professional persona anymore, that they're professional carers and that's what their lot in life is. I would really like to encourage you to reconsider that and look at some professional self-care. Now, it may be that right now, study is the furthest thing from your mind, or getting a job is the furthest thing from your mind. But just to sit down and have a talk with someone about what that might look like if you were to study, what would it be? If you were to work again, what would it be? And actually to start to nurture that professional persona and actually recognize that that's actually a part of you and it's a very, very important part of you. A lot of our families have got children transitioning into adulthood. We've got a lot of families that have got young adults with significant disabilities at home who aren't able to work, and they're looking at another 50 years of being full-time carers. And that is a really big thing. And we will actually do a webinar about this particular thing, and we'll be doing some lunches and things like that for different for carers who are caring for different life stages. So we'll start doing some lunches for carers who have got young adults or older adults at home. We'll do some for who've got 0 to 5, primary school, high school, because your needs are different at each stage. So we will be doing those lunches later in the year, and we're excited to be looking at doing those. I think rediscovering what that might be, and it may be that your first step to exploring your professional persona is doing some of the care come and try activities. Going to your local neighbourhood centre and maybe doing a Word or Excel free course for carers. Just beginning to start to explore that stuff. Nothing that is assessed, so there's no pressure on it, but just that you begin to explore some of those things. You might go and do card making or candle making or lead lighting, but all of those things build your identity outside of being a carer. And that is a very important area of self-care. Kez, did you want to say anything about that? Because you spend a lot of time, like 80% of your workload has been working with carers.
Yeah, I guess, and it's a really difficult space, and lots of sense of grief and loss around what will never be. I guess my thoughts were when you were talking about that, you're saying, think about what you would like to do to professionally. And it's kind of like having a dream, isn't it? And keeping your sense of self. So
Yeah.
kind of having a boundary around that, because I think as carers, they become boundaryless because they have to give up so much of themselves and their sense of future and sense of future for their kids, that their sense of who they are gets lost in the ebb and flow of that. So I liked how you said there, have a think about that. Remember who you are, really, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that you are more than a carer.
Yeah.
You are a carer, and you are a parent, or you are a grandparent. You are a foster parent or you're a kinship carer, but you are actually more than that. And I think society does force that on us a little bit in the way that professionals can treat us as carers and the way that the system treats us. You can have a carer payment or a carer allowance that will keep you in poverty. You're not actually valued. We'll just pay you the same as the dole to care for your kid. Oh, we'll give you an extra $58 a week. And so there's a societal lack of value of the role of carers that also inform that we're not professionals, and that we can't be a carer and a professional carer, and that we can also have an identity outside of being a carer. So it's just worth thinking about. And if you can access some counselling through Carer Gateway or Each or somewhere like that, that might be something at some stage you might like to explore, or you might want to say, yeah, no, it's just too hard at the moment. I just can't even consider that. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, when we're in that survival mode, just hold ourselves so tightly because we're afraid if we let go, we won't stop letting go.
Yeah, because if we start crying, we're never going to stop. Thanks, Kez. All right, then we have our online self-care. I think there are days when I spend too much time on Facebook, and I have not ever done Candy Crush, but I have done Wordscapes, and I've done a little tiny toon one with a little rocket. And there are times where I've just sat on the couch at night and done that and done that and done that. And it's been a form of dissociation, just because I need to turn my brain off. But it does come to a point where it gets too much. and I'm very careful about what I follow on Facebook, and what I watch on YouTube, and because it's very easy to get emotional about things and expend a whole lot of emotional energy on online stuff. And that can be really, really detrimental. And I see people broken over what happens on Facebook and in social media. So just be so careful of emotional engagement, because what is presented online is not always real, and we can judge ourselves. I was looking at a thing last night where a mum took her daughter to the beach and took all these photos, and it looked like they were having a lovely day at the beach, but they never actually went in the water, and the mum actually never played with her daughter. But on Facebook, it looks like they'd had the most amazing day at the beach, and mum's hair was perfect and everything was perfect, but it was staged. And a mum who had been at home making mud pies out the back with their child looked at that and felt inadequate. And it was just unpacking that what you see on social media is not actually accurate, and that we can fall into a trap of believing some of those things. Yes, Kes?
Someone's just put something in the Q&A. FCAV Victoria offers a great carer assistant program, fantastic therapeutic phone support that really promotes our positive mental health as carers, individuals and ourselves. What a fantastic referral that is.
That is great. So that's, is that Foster Care Victoria?
It doesn't actually, it just says FCAV.
Is that the Foster Care Association of Victoria? Or is it the Family Carers Association?
Yes, Foster Care Association of Victoria.
Yeah. Fantastic. So for anyone who's a carer, who's caring not for their own child, and Permanent Care Victoria, also very good around that sort of thing. Yeah. So thanks for that. It's so true. All right. Okay. Now, what are we going to do and how are we going to do this? So what I'm going to do, I don't usually ask you guys to respond to the webinars. Like, you can answer the questions and respond, but I'm actually tomorrow, we're going to send you a self-care assessment in an email, and I want you to go through it and choose one thing to work on in each of the 6 areas, and I want you to email it back to me. I want you to email me what you're going to do, so you can actually have a bit of a look, because the questions are really around these things that we've been talking about. So there's the 6 areas that we're going to look at. Where are we? Oh no, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry, guys. All right. So it's going to, the assessment goes through, are you eating healthy food all the time, sometimes rarely? Taking care of my personal hygiene all of the time, sometimes rarely? And just to go through and do your own personal assessment of where you think you're up to. And then I actually want you to email me at reception just one thing you're going to do in each of those areas in this next month. And it doesn't have to be big. We're also going to send you out a list of potential self-care activities that you can choose. For me, I used to think that I had to have everything spot on to be able to do self-care, and that it needed to be kind of this grand gesture. And I love what Aisha said before about doing your tax can be self-care. And that can be, it sounds a bit nutty that work can be self-care, but sometimes the most caring thing you can do for yourself is actually clean out your wardrobe, or clean out your pantry, or plan your meals for the week. that is one of the self-cares that really, really works for me. Years ago, somebody said to me, be today your own best friend of the you of tomorrow. And then when you get to tomorrow, thank yourself for being kind to yourself. So if I actually do plan my meals for the week, I'm actually being my best friend of the Bobbi of Monday night and the Bobbi of Tuesday night and the exhausted Bobbi of Wednesday night and the Bobbi who's got nothing left on Thursday night. And then when I get there and I go to the freezer, I go to the fridge and there's a simple meal there ready to prepare, or it's already prepared and I actually cooked it on Sunday and it's in the freezer and I just need to reheat it. I then go, oh, thank you, Bobbi, for looking after yourself so well and having this here. So it's those little things that actually keep you going. So I'd really love you all to really engage with that. And if you're watching this as a recording, there's no time limit on this. You can send it in at any time and reception will forward them to me and I'll might just flick you a quick email. Because we kind of really want to be supporting each other a lot more. The other thing that I'm wanting to do is to be providing more follow-up things post-webinar. So we're going to be working on some workbooks for you after the webinars so that it's not just the webinar and then that's it. I know we send a follow-up email, but we're going to be sending you some just really simple workbooks and just some reflections to do post a webinar, because the whole purpose of the webinars is that we're not available to support everybody and it's not appropriate for us to do that. But I think as a team, we've got some great stuff to share and we want to share that with you and some of our learning. So we want you to be able to really get the very best out of our time together. Now, I'm mindful that we've kind of gotten through things really well tonight, which is a little bit unusual, but we've done really well. So I'm actually happy if anybody's got any thoughts, comments, questions about anything at all. We've got a wealth of knowledge here in this space with everybody that's here tonight. So I'll just throw it open, Kez.
Great, sounds awesome.
So it can be a question about anything. I'm just going to go off on a tangent while we see if anything comes up, because something's just popped up into my head. One of the things that I've really noticed over the last couple of years is there's kind of been a bit of a decline in joy and hope for our families. And I actually think a lot of that is to do with the deficits-based thinking of the NDIS. So the NDIS and all of the funding related to that is based on what our kids can't do, not what they can do. And that every year we have to kind of justify why our kids still need funding. And we have to kind of paint this deficits-based picture. And we might know that our kids have actually made some really good progress, but we're almost too scared to celebrate that progress. And I've been doing a lot of reflecting about that and thinking about that and how we can meet the NDIS needs and the funding bodies' needs for their deficit based reporting model, but still celebrate the amazing achievements that we've had. And I think for us, we have now got the right level of funding in our grandson's NDIS plan. Like, we've got the right level of funding and we're actually doing much better. Like, things are hard, but we're actually doing much better because we've got the right level of funding. And I myself are going, oh, we're actually doing quite well. But I almost don't want to tell them that we're doing quite well, because if I tell them that we're doing quite well, they might take away that right level of funding that is sustaining us to be quite well. So I've just been pondering that and thinking about that and wondering about how we kind of transverse that space. So interested in comments and thoughts around that.
Sharon just commented and said that she so gets that point of view.
It's a really tricky one, isn't it? And like we talk about Sharon's young person, like the progress that they have made is just extraordinary. Like they've just made the most amazing progress, and we're all celebrating that progress. And we want to highlight that progress. But if we think about where they were kind of starting a bit below the 8 ball. So now they're kind of up to the 8 ball nearly. And so they've done amazing and they've come a really long way, but they're still not even quite where their neurotypical peers are yet. So we can celebrate that development, but actually still show there is a gap and there is more support required.
Yeah, Sharon's just said again, I'm not game to let them know as I'm scared of what funds might get withdrawn.
Yeah. And I hear you, Sharon. I'm absolutely in a very similar place, and I'm not really quite sure what to do about it, except for to actually really celebrate that progress, and actually make sure that we very clearly demonstrate the remaining gap, but celebrating the progress. And I'm working on how we do that really, really well. Any other thoughts or comments?
Not as yet.
That's okay. We can have an early mark. That would be okay. Aisha, have you got any other thoughts? You often have great wisdom.
Muted there. I didn't want to disturb people with my typing, getting everything ready for the replay page. I just think we're all probably exhausted, and that we just have to be kind to ourselves right now and know that, like, you know, you said before that I love to be a great mother. Right now, I just need to feed the kids and do stuff like the washing and stuff like that, and not have to aspire to be the best parent, just be a parent. I just think kindness to ourselves, like how we talk to ourselves, what we expect of ourselves, you know, the way that we think of our best friend. If they were in our situation, they'd go, oh, you poor thing, let me give you a hug, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's just like that, you know, beautiful self-care.
Yeah. And working out what that hug for ourselves is, and then doing it.
And even like for me, I recently ended a relationship, and today I was feeling a bit sad because it was their birthday, and I was tempted to do something that wasn't beneficial for myself, probably go backwards in time. But, you know, and just being okay that you don't feel great or happy on that day. It's like, it's okay to have a cry or reach out to a friend, you know. Yeah. And I see Sharon's just shared again, so she got your point of view. But she just added something. A good thing we recently had a great day at a trans day of visibility, but he crashed for 24 hours to recover. Yeah. And I think, you know, when you have those heightened experiences, you have the post-excitement hangover and that's okay too.
Yeah. And I think that we don't always appreciate how difficult and how much energy it takes our neurodiverse young people and children to actually do something really big.
And well, as you know, like even just going to school for some kids is big. So my child has never done pretty much a full week of high school, and I'm okay with that, you know. And if she gets there some of the time, well, hopefully next term she'll get there some of the time. But yeah, so just recovery, building in recovery. So like even neurotypical kids, like my son went to monster trucks on the weekend, and then we had my brother visiting from New South Wales and his cousin. So he had 2 big nights, and he had to have the day off. He's neurotypical. So
yeah,
we all need mental health days.
Absolutely. And, you know, we just got to do it.
Yeah.
And do what we can. And we don't have to do self-care for an hour. We don't have to do self-care for half a day. We don't have to do self-care for a day. Having a drink of water can be self-care.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just for this moment, and then the next moment we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think we make self-care too big. So hold on, let me rub that out. I sometimes have a tendency to make self-care too big, and I aspire to have my self-care perfect. And that is just not attainable or sustainable, and it sets me up to fail. And it's just not helpful. So it's the little things. The other day I was writing reports, and my reward that I set myself up with, like my self-care in between writing reports, was to go and prune roses. And my gardener said to me, "Oh, I can do the roses." And I said, "No, pruning the roses is actually a reward for me and part of my self-care." And they just kind of shook their head at me and walked off.
They didn't get it, but
no, they didn't. But they did actually.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, no, they really did. And I'm like, I'm not the most amazing rose pruner in the world, but I actually really do enjoy doing that. And so if you've got to do the dishes and then go and do something that fills your cup, and if you've got to go and do, you know, fold the washing and then have a drink of water, and if you've got to do things that you've got to do, getting those things done, it is self-care as well.
So Kathy said quality versus quantity, and oddly in this case, quantity sometimes outweighs the quality because they're small things, but over, you know, when you combine them all together, it creates the quality.
Yeah, that's right. And you know,
most of our lives are small moments, right? Like we only give birth so many times, some people more than others, but you know, like it's painful. But those big moments of falling in love, or, you know, or even big trauma, but a lot of the time it's just constant, you know. So we need to segue in these little things.
Yeah. Tanya's made a comment, and I think that she's probably at where a lot of parents are. My self-care will come when my boy is doing better.
Oh, Tanya. Yeah. But
We've all been there, Bobbi.
Yeah.
You know.
I know. And look, that's, I just so totally get that space, but our kids are not going to be able to do better until we're doing better either.
Also,
Because
we could crash before they get better, right? Like
yeah. And they need to see us okay. They do need to know that we're okay, because when we unpack things later, I did a session with a young man on Saturday, and a whole family session, and he was saying that I actually think my neurodiversity is the reason that my family is a mess, and that my sister has been to hospital, and that my mum and dad aren't happy. I'm the reason for that. And we don't want our kids to be thinking that they're the reason that we're not okay. We don't want to put that responsibility on them by us not having our self-care sorted out, because they do carry that, and they won't share that with us, but they do carry it.
You did a video, Bobbi, that we shared on Bobbi's tips about how children later reflect on their childhood. And it's that sort of thing. It would be worth doing a whole webinar on that, because we think we're doing the right thing, but often, you know, we're just making it up, right? Like as we go. And we can't control anything half the time, but yeah, it would be interesting to discuss that more too. I don't know if anyone's seen that video on our Facebook page, but I'll try and find it.
I think Kathy's made a really good comment here. It's a journey and we need to stop and pause and include self-care in order to sustain what the journey requires of us.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Can I like quote that, Kathy?
Yeah. Oh, please, can we put that up on the Facebook page?
Yeah, it's actually gone just after 9, guys.
All right, so we're going to finish up. Thank you everyone for coming. And what's next month, Aisha?
Oh, hang on. I was just working on that page. So I don't have the link yet. I emailed Denise just before. Restricted eating and disordered eating. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to trying to feed kids that only like white food or this food or that food. So that is on the 5th of May at 8 p.m. May already. There you go.
May already. And we'll have the amazing Kiri with us.
Yes.
And I think we'll have Victoria with us as well. We're going to invite Victoria to come as well.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I think that'll be really, really good. And, yeah.
And as soon as the Zoom recording finishes doing its thing after this, I'll just pop the link in again. Everything, including the slides, are already on this page that I've just shared.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Aisha. And remember, please, when you get the assessment tomorrow, do it and just choose, even if you're going to choose one thing out of the whole thing, just one thing that you're going to do, send it through. And if you can choose something in a few different areas, send it through. And please just look after yourselves. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's for sure. Thank you.
All right.
Night, everyone.
Night, everyone. Bye. Thanks, Aisha. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.